What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Jenks Center podcast. Lamar couldn't do it. He couldn't save us from Taylor Swift and Brittany Mahomes take over the Super Bowl. Oh, that's going to be a rough one to sit through. I wonder what the over and unders are showing Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl are going to be. It's going to be interesting. And, of course, we got Tony Romo and Jim Nantz calling the game. As we all know, they love Patrick Mahomes, and I mean love Patrick Mahomes. They glaze him up and do all that with him. They love him. So we're going to have to sit through that for 4 hours. And yeah, not what we all wanted. I think everyone wanted Baltimore, Detroit. We wanted to see kind of two new teams, teams that haven't, been in the Super Bowl in a couple of years.
10 years,
Lions,
over 10 years now for the Ravens. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Lions have never. So, Jenks, thoughts on the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good matchup. I mean, team-wise, like both teams are going to be going at it, and I think it's going to be a good matchup as a Super Bowl. Like it's going to be a good game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means, but I do think it's going to be really telling that first half how the 49ers perform. 49ers come out slow like they did against the Packers and the Lions, then I think they're kind of screwed against the Chiefs. So that first half's going to be very telling, but I'm hoping it's a good Super Bowl. It's all we can hope for right now, and I hope Taylor Swift doesn't take it over with all of her Swifties, so we'll see.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. But yeah, like you said, two best teams in football playing at the end of the year. That's what you want. Just, I think we all wish it was just two different teams just because we've seen it. This is a rematch from 3 years ago. I think it's going to be a good game, though, and we're going to break that game down next week. We got a week in between right now, little free week, no game predictions. We got a fun topic for you guys. Who overperformed and who underperformed in this year's playoffs. Me and Jenks will be giving you 5 guys, teams, coaches, sides of the football that just over or underperformed this postseason.
Welcome to the Jenks and the Hammer podcast, bringing you the latest NFL news and insights from the perspectives of two die-hard fans. So sit back, relax, and get ready for some football talk with Jenks and the Hammer.
And here we go. Over and under performances of the 2024 postseason. Number one for me, this is Grayson's favorite guy, Baker Mayfield. He overperformed this postseason. First in playoff passing touchdowns, 6, and he was third in passing yards in the playoffs. And he did these numbers with only playing 2 games. Really impressive. Baker was a mystery coming into this year. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what to expect with Tampa. But now it looks like, after winning the division, winning a playoff game, performing like he did in the playoffs, I think Tampa has found their quarterback for years to come, and I expect a big extension for Baker Mayfield this offseason.
Yeah, I think he came in as in a prove-it-year deal with the Bucs. I think that's kind of what the Saints should have done. Like the Bucs came into the season, they killed a lot of their salary cap, or their salary cap over balance, whatever you want to call it. But they paid Baker Mayfield, I think it was like $14 million or something like that for a 1-year deal. He comes in and he has a great season. He came into Lambeau, like perfect passer rating, first time it's ever been done in Lambeau. And then I think he's had an up and down season. He's had a few games where, he looks like the same old Baker, but then he's had a few games where he really excelled, overperformed. So I'm interested to see what they do. I think they do give him a maybe 2 to 3 year deal after the season, give him a little bit of an extension with a new new offensive coordinator, I believe, coming in to Tampa Bay. And so I think for the key for Baker is the weapons coming back this next season. I think Mike Evans might be leaving. Interested to see where he goes. He might go to like the Chiefs, a team that needs a receiver, something like that. And if he stays, then I think that's good for Baker as well. So I think Baker Mayfield, if he's able to keep performing, it might be, I think for this year's performance, I'm going to say it's similar to Geno Smith's last year. Geno Smith came out, balled out last year, kind of was like, I'm back. He just needs to redo it this year and see, because Geno Smith kind of fell down a little bit this year. If Baker's able to come back out next year, do the same thing, then I think definitely he's going to be the Buccaneers quarterback for the future.
Yeah, that's the question. If he's going to be consistent, we'll see.
Yeah. And then my first guy I want to talk about, I'm not going to do this in any order because, they all underperformed. But my first guy I want to talk about is going to be Josh Allen. I think he overperformed for expectations. I think he's getting a little bit too much hate for what happened in the Bills this postseason. He came in against the Steelers, 4 touchdowns, 277 yards total. no turnovers, which was kind of expected. Steelers without TJ Watt, it's not anything crazy. Next game, though, he took on the Chiefs defense, which is one of the best defenses in the league, as we saw this past week against the Ravens. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown and had 258 yards with only 1 fumble. And you look at that, it's not crazy yards numbers, but he was basically accountable for every point other than the field goal that the Bills took that game. And you look at it, he should have there was a huge play towards the end of that game where he threw the ball like 60, 65 yards in the air to Stefon Diggs, perfect throw, and it went right through his hands. And you look at that, like, Josh Allen is putting his team into positions to be able to win that game. The team wasn't capitalizing. His teammates weren't doing the right things. And I think his coach let him down as well. That fake punt, near the 40-yard line, whatever, to Damar Hamlin was a terrible call. It was a terrible decision. They got bailed out with a little fumble, but they weren't able to drive down the field the next drive. But I think Stefon Diggs has let him down this postseason, and I think a big player that's going to step up next year is Khalil Shakir. I'm interested to see what he does for the Bills. But I think Josh Allen's getting way too much hate for basically what happened to them. They missed a field goal at the end of the game and cost them the loss. So I think Josh Allen hate needs to kind of stop. But I do think there's discussion of him being next Peyton Manning to Tom Brady's Patrick Mahomes. I think that's a little bit overkill at the moment. I think he needs to beat Patrick Mahomes first. But I will say that Josh Allen's getting overhated for what he's done, and I think he had a good performance this postseason.
So you think he overperformed?
Yeah, I think he overperformed for what his expectations were. He came
out. Strongly disagree.
Because he came out, and his rushing game, which he hadn't, let's be honest here, some of those rushing touchdowns, were key in that game. He's putting the ball on the ground, getting it done, and he's putting his body in harm's way, and he's just powering over dudes. He's hard to bring down, and I think that was the thing that needed to happen in the playoffs, was his rushing taking over. And he was able to do that. If he wasn't running the ball as well as he would, I wouldn't say he was overperformed. But he ran the ball well. He made the smart decisions until the end of that Chiefs game where he kind of threw that one ball to the end zone where he really didn't need to. But other than that, I think, he performed really well in the playoffs. I think he overperformed compared to what people have been saying about his performance.
No, I strongly disagree. I don't think he overperformed. Definitely did not. He didn't underperform at the same time. He was all right. But expectations, going on that run they did towards the end of the season, getting that number 2 seed, first round, they beat up on a shitty Steelers team. Expected at home. We get that. 2, you get Mahomes, the guy that you haven't beaten in the postseason, coming into your house finally. You're not going to Kansas City, and you lose that game. Yes, he played well. That fumble hurt. And just, expectations in Buffalo to go win a Super Bowl. And he can get the job done. And he made some bad decision late. Right, you could have checked it down to Diggs. That probably got the first down.
I agree with that, but I do think he had Khalil Shakir open on that play, and he got bumped as he threw it. So I think that was kind of bad timing. But the final 3rd and 7 or whatever, I think he should have tried to get a good amount of yards just for the kicker even. But through the rest of the game, people are kind of blaming him for that whole game being lost. I've seen people just talking about, oh, Josh Allen didn't really perform well. I think he did perform well. He had a good game, but I think the pieces around him didn't make enough plays.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, he committed a turnover, and he made 2 bad decisions late. And when you're considered a top 3 quarterback in the league, you got to make that in the playoffs. You got to make that happen. So I don't know where you're going with that, but all right.
I think compared to what people have said about his performance in that game,
I don't think people. I think people are upset about the decision at the end. I don't think they're upset with the overall postseason performance.
I don't know, and I feel like people. What I will say is people blame him for most of their losses. In the playoffs, Josh Allen needs to perform better for the playoffs or whatever because of his record. But I think when you look at his stats compared to other guys who are losing in the playoffs, I think he has less blame than other guys that are going into the playoffs, not playing well, and then receiving blame because they should. They're not playing well, like Dak. Dak had a terrible game in the playoffs. They lost because of Dak. Josh Allen is leading the team. It could be different comparisons, but I'm saying I think in comparison what people are saying about Josh Allen, he overperformed in the aspect of that he put his team in a position to win the game, and he put his team in a position to kick a field goal at the end of that game, and the kicker missed. That's not his fault. He still drove down the field, and he put the ball in the right place, and that throw to Stefon Diggs is ridiculous. Diggs needs to come down with that catch. I think that's why he overperformed in my eyes. And
I
I
don't.
don't think and I wouldn't say he underperformed for sure. And I don't think I agree that you could say, yeah, he just performed up to what he was expected to. But I think in the eyes of reporters and all these people saying that, oh yeah, he cost him a loss, I think he overperformed in that aspect because he put his team in the spot to win the game.
I think you got to up your expectations of Josh Allen.
I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I got to start watching more Bills games, but we'll see.
All right, number 2 on my list, Micah Parsons, underperformed. Dallas just played one
time.
playoff game this year because my Green Bay Packers kicked the butts in the wild card round. But man, when you talk about top players in the league, top defense players in the league, Micah Parsons' name's the first one that comes up most of the time. Dude's a game wrecker. They use him in so many different spots. Playoff game. You're the number 2 seed at home, and you do not perform. I mean, he had 2 total tackles. I think it was 1 solo, 1 assist, and he had 1 pressure. I know that the Packers' offensive line is good, but they don't have a dude. There's no David Bakhtiari. There's no All-Pro on that line that's meant to,
everyone down every week.
Stop
Yeah.
Micah Parsons, and he just did nothing. And to that, I also thought Dallas used him in some weird different ways. There were a couple times on 3rd down where he was in coverage and not really rushing the passer. I thought it was a little weird, but and I could say Mike McCarthy, Dan Quinn, underperformed, which they did. But I want to spotlight Micah Parsons because I like Micah Parsons. I know the type of game wrecker he is, and I just thought, he got his butt kicked, and as a top player in this league, and someone who kind of year after year is in that defensive player of the year conversation, to not come through and not, show out is pretty embarrassing. So definitely underperformed, and yeah.
No, I gotta agree with you there. Micah Parsons, for what he was expected to do in that game where he needs to put a pressure on a rookie quarterback, Jordan Love, like when you get pressure on a rookie quarterback, that's when they start getting flustered. So his one job that game was, hey, get pressure on him, make his mind a little bit flustered, get him off the ball, just in his mind. He wasn't able to do that, and Jordan Love looked great against them, and they made the Cowboys pay. So I like that pick of Micah Parsons.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
and I think I just want to say one more time, I don't want to cut you off, but I chose Micah Parsons because I know the type of player he is. I didn't choose Dak or Mike McCarthy because honestly, past couple of years, I think this is kind of what we come to expect by the Cowboys. This is how they come out in the playoffs. Mike McCarthy, this is how Dak usually performs in the playoffs. It's not too pretty. So I don't even put him. Like, that's just expected at this point. It's not underperformance, it's not overperformance. You know what I mean? It's just, no.
I mean, how many times are you going to let him ball out all regular season and get 12 wins, whatever, 11, 12 wins every single year? And they haven't made it to the championship game in what? I don't even know, 20 years, 30 years?
Yeah, and then
It's
every
ridiculous.
year.
So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and every year it's a first round exit. So I can't even use them. I was going to use them, but I don't. I can't.
Yeah, the next guy on my list is going to be Tua. I think he underperformed big time. Yeah, the weather. I'll give him a little bit benefit of the doubt with the weather. Had very, very cold game. Very, it was just chilly. No one wants to play in that. But then you look at the other side of the ball. Patrick Mahomes had a good game in that weather. He was able to throw the ball down the field. He's able to throw the ball 15, 20 yards down the field, get good completions, good accuracy. Then you look at Tua. He had 1 touchdown, 1 pick. And his throws, he looked scared the whole entire game. He looked like he was trying to throw checkdowns all game. It was not a pretty game. When you have Tyreek Hill, when you have other guys on this team, Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle was out though. I don't remember. I really don't remember that game much at all. It wasn't really. It wasn't a great game. Other than the Chiefs kind of killed him. But he looked scared the whole game, and I think that's something that needs to be talked about. Mike McDaniels, he wants to take him and make a quarterback that is able to hit these weapons, and you saw it in the regular season. He was able to do it against teams that were lesser than the Dolphins. But every time they got up to a regular good team that was going to be a playoff team, he didn't do as well. So you saw it throughout the year. I think the end of the season, he threw 4 picks the last 2 games. And then coming into this playoff game, he underperformed again. And I think that's key to talk about for the Dolphins and their future. I'm interested to see what they do, if they are ready to commit to Tua, making the long-term quarterback for years to come, or if they're going to try to start looking at other quarterbacks, which they might need to start doing soon with their head coach being young and he wants to start a dynasty over there in Miami. They have a good defense, everything like that. They want to start a good team, and it starts with the quarterback. So if Tua doesn't start performing well and he keeps on doing these playoff performances like this, then I think they're moving on pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely. Breaking news. I just got an update on my phone. Seahawks are set to hire Ravens defensive coordinator Mike MacDonald.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good hire. Kind of expected. I know there's a lot of people that said Dan Quinn because of his history with Seattle, but they get McDonald from Baltimore. Really good hire. 36 years old, young. That Baltimore defense was awesome this year. Honestly, when you look at the numbers, I think they were a top 15 defense all time, something like that.
They were killing everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, they were they were one of the best defenses of all time, to be honest. And that's gonna be a great hire for Seattle. Seattle fans be happy. We're gonna talk about this a little bit more in the next segment. Just coaching updates, interviews, hirings. We're gonna break down a little bit more, but we're getting this now. So just quick
I
thoughts.
think that's big for the Seahawks. Legion of Boom is trying to return. I think that was the key for Seattle. Always having a great defense, kind of faded away these last few years. But if that Legion of Boom is able to return with these new young stars that they have on the team and a new head coach, the 12th man's going to be right back in it, and Seattle's going to be a force to be reckoned with the NFC because the NFC still sucks. And I think that's something we haven't talked about enough this year. It's like the NFC has been a coin toss all season. And the Packers came in as a 7 seed and looked like a wrecking ball. That's how it is in the NFC right now. You never know what's going to happen every week. And so I think this is huge for the Seahawks.
Yeah, one thing I'll just say about the Niners, I do not like this hire if I'm a Niner fan. Now I got to play this dude 2 times a year. I know what he did to me week 16 or week 17, whenever it was when Niners played Baltimore. It was not pretty for Brock Purdy, and now he's got to face this coordinator 2 times a year. So that's going to be interesting. Good hire for Seattle. Staying on San Fran, 49ers front 7. I have them as underperforming. Why do I say that? Coming into I think all season long, San Fran's defense has been awesome. They got dudes on that side of the ball. We know that.
Yeah, they were the best DLine in the league. That's what they were regarded as the whole year.
Yeah, they got Bosa, Hargrave. They made a trade at deadline for Chase Young, Kinlaw, Armstead. They got dudes. In the divisional round against the Packers, they let Aaron Jones run for 108 yards. This past weekend, they let David Montgomery run for 93 yards. Plus, I think Gibbs and Jameson Williams both had 40 yards plus on the ground.
Shit ton of yards.
So they've been running teams have been running the ball effectively against San Fran. And I think when you really look at their defensive line, Chase Young has underperformed. He hasn't been what they expected him to be. And when you look at that line, I think you have a lot of pass rushers. I don't think you have a lot of guys that can stop the run, except for Hargrave. But, I think you got a lot of pass rushers along that defensive line. And another thing, too, if you've been watching the games, the Niners have been getting killed by jet sweeps and pitches, outside zone. Anything outside of tackles, they've just been getting killed. And this is underperforming because I don't think we didn't really notice this all year with San Fran. And now it's starting to show. And not in a good time because it's in the playoffs. And they're going to get to Kansas City. Andy Reid, he knows how to call plays. He knows how to dial things up. And Pacheco is running like a madman. He runs very angry. Yeah. And he's tough to bring down. So I have them as underperforming. I think San Fran's defense as a whole is kind of underperformed a little bit, especially that front 7, especially this past weekends when you saw the Detroit Lions go up and down the field on them, and they were just bullying the front 7. The offensive line from Detroit was just killing them. There were plays where David Montgomery would be 10 yards down the field and he wasn't even touched yet. Yeah. So I would be very concerned if I'm a Niners fan, and it's something to watch out for. So I have them as underperforming in this postseason.
Yeah, and I think that trade with Chase Young is huge. They made that deal and everyone was like, holy crap, the rich get richer. But Chase Young came over, hasn't done anything. And you saw it last week. He loafed on the play where Jahmyr Gibbs had that outside run and scored easily. He's just kind of jogging over. Could have easily made a tackle if he ran. But he didn't want to put in the effort, and then he missed the tackle. So it's big for the 49ers. I think the Chiefs are going to run all over them if they're smart this week. And I think they're just going to keep committed to it. They're going to keep committed to the run. And I think if they're able to do that, I think the Chiefs can win pretty well, pretty easily, maybe by a touchdown, something like that in this game. But I think the run game is going to be huge for them on defense. I think they're relying on those linebackers and Fred Warner. I think Fred Warner's, he's the best linebacker in the league, but you can't rely on him to make every single play when the team runs the ball. You cannot do that. You need the D-line to stop the run every once in a while, but they haven't been doing that. So I like that you brought that up.
Yeah, and a little note on Chase Young. I think there's been rumors that he could be benched for the Super Bowl due to his effort and play. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and that's huge for him as a number 2 overall pick in the past.
Contract year too.
Yeah, contract year going into free agency. Like teams are going to see this and not give him squats. So big for him. Hopefully in the Super Bowl, maybe he puts in a little bit more effort and makes a few big plays. My next guy that I want to talk about is Stefon Diggs, big underperformer throughout the year, honestly, as well as the playoffs. So in the playoffs, he had 10 catches and 73 yards in 2 games. And as the number 1 receiver in Buffalo, that's what he was brought in to do. And he did that the first year. He won Offensive Player of the Year, balled out with Josh Allen that 1 year. And then ever since, he's kind of slowly regressed. But you saw it big time this year. And in the playoffs, he didn't show up. And they were relying on Khalil Shakir. Guys like, James Cook was huge for them in the playoffs as well. Dalton Kincaid. They're relying on their tight ends and their second string receivers more than they are Stefon Diggs. And that's not something you want. So I think that's huge for him. I don't think they'll let him go this year. I think maybe he'll have another year. I know there's a lot of dead cap if they let him go, trade him, whatever. So I think Stefon Diggs is here to stay for another year. Hopefully he's able to turn around. But for the Bills, it's not what you like to see in the playoffs. I think maybe they're going to start looking at younger receivers, maybe trying to draft one in this upcoming draft.
Yeah, definitely. Underperformed. I get they played 2 good defenses, and if you're that defense corner, your number 1 thing is take away number 14, right? How can we stop him? But at the same time, it's Stefon Diggs, and that's your second best player in offense. If you're Josh Allen, playoff time, you got to look that guy's way, every drop back, and you got to connect. You got to find a way to connect with him more. So that's on the Bills' OC too, on maybe not getting him involved because that DC of the opposing team is trying to take him away. But yeah, definitely underperformed.
Yeah, he hasn't had a 100-yard rushing or 100-yard receiving game since I think week 6 or week 7. So all throughout the end of the season, it's seven catches for 87 yards against Miami, 4 for 26 against New England, 5 for 29 against the Chargers, 4 for 48 against Dallas. Like no touchdowns since November 26th. So the guy that's supposed to be a receiver 1 isn't putting up receiver 1 numbers, and that needs to be fixed in the next season. So we'll see what they do.
Definitely. My third on the list, underperformed Browns defense. I think coming into the playoffs, I think we kind of crowned Browns, second best defense in the league. Then with Baltimore, we kind of crowned that defense. And I think heading into that wild card game against Houston, everyone picked Cleveland because of their defense. Because they're like, I don't think I did. Grayson did. I don't think this rookie quarterback is going to be able to move the ball against this Cleveland defense. And he moved the ball. CJ Stroud ate up with 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, and with almost a perfect passer rating. His rating was 157.2. So 1 completion away, and he would have been, 158.3, which is perfect. And wow. Yeah. Browns defense definitely underperformed, but that's the Browns for you, right?
Yeah. I mean, they find a way to let their fans down every year. So I'm with you there. I mean, I think the Browns in that game, like every time that the Texans were passing the ball, it seemed like someone was open deep. And that's not, we hadn't grown accustomed to that all year. Like they had good pass defense all year. And then the Texans came out. I don't know if that's the offensive coordinator is coming out and being a dog, but I mean, that wasn't expected. And CJ Stroud, he's been great all year, but that he's not the one getting receivers wide open. Like that's not how that works. His receivers are wide open for him to throw to, so it was really bad look for the Browns defense. I'm glad you brought them up. Next, my next team on the list is going to be the Lions O-line, and Hammer discussed it a little bit with the 49ers D-line underperformance. The Lions killed the 49ers D-line, completely killed them. You saw it in the first half. They were blowing them off the line, maybe 2-3 yards every play. The running backs were getting huge gaps to run through, and they weren't getting touched until the linebackers got to them. And I think the big key there, you saw it in the playoffs, is they had 375 rushing yards in 2 games. And so for a team that is kind of the Dan Campbell culture is punching a team in the face every single week. And that's what they need is the Lions O-line, is they're just to punch them in the face on the D-line every week, run the ball down their throat. And I think they were doing that. That being said, they were overperforming the whole both games. Second half of that 49ers game, they stopped running the ball. There was that fumble with Jahmyr Gibbs, and you just saw that the offensive game plan just kind of fade to passes only. And it wasn't a good look for them. They went, I think it was, 27-0 run the 49ers did. Not a good look. Not a good look for the Lions. But I think that Lions O-line wasn't to blame for that. I think it was kind of more of the game plan and the scheming kind of changed in the second half. But that Lions O-line looked great, and I want to give them props.
Yeah, it's going to be scary for years to come against Green Bay, especially with that offensive coordinator staying in town. So that's going to be interested. And my last guy on the list, you got something to say?
I was going to say, at least you get to look forward to a couple primetime games every year with the Lions Packers.
Yeah, it's going to be a good rivalry for a couple years to come. My last person on my list, I got to go with a Green Bay Packer. I'm going Romeo Doubs. Who? Yeah, Romeo Doubs. Third in playoff receiving yards with only playing 2 games. He had 10 receptions for 234 yards and a touchdown.
How much of that was in the Cowboys
two
game?
games?
But how much of that was all in the Cowboys game? A lot of it.
I want to say 160.
Yeah, a lot of it was. I mean, he still played well against the 49ers, but yeah, it was a lot against the Cowboys. But
he's still like 80, 90 yards against the Niners.
And you've been kind of talking about Romeo all year, like that connection he formed with Jordan Love.
Yeah, so I think Romeo with all these receivers has the best connection with Jordan. All you're talking about Jaden Reed, the rookie, he's flashing. He could do a lot of cool gadget plays. He's flashy. Christian Watson's a freak, 6'5", runs a 4.3, long, athletic. Dontavian Wicks, a 5th-round pick who came out of nowhere. He's got some twitchiness to his game, his releases, his route running is really smooth. And then there's just got Romeo Doubs, who I think people kind of forgot about, and he's just this possession receiver. But him and Jordan have this connection that dating back to like preseason last year that I knew was going to be big coming into this year. Romeo led the league in touchdowns, led the Packers in touchdowns this year, and that was big. And that had to do with the connection, and he showed out in these playoffs. So big hats off to him. And of course, shout out to the Packers. And I would say the Packers, Matt LaFleur overperformed this playoffs, 7th seed, youngest team ever to make the playoffs, to win a playoff game. And then, hey, they were beating, the guys that are representing the NFC for 57 minutes, and they lost it in the last 3 minutes. And they beat Detroit this season pretty badly on Thanksgiving. So, I'm excited for years to come. It's gonna be exciting to watch this team grow. But they definitely overperformed. And shout out to Romeo Doubs because he had an awesome playoffs.
Yeah, and games. I think the Packers, like, if they won that game against the 49ers, they might have had a shot. Like I know you were feeling it as well. Like they might have had a shot going to the Super Bowl if they won that game. Like the way their momentum was carrying them, the way they were playing. And I know it was a bummer the way it ended, but you got a bright future ahead of you. So I think that they also were the first 7 seed to come in and win a game. So congrats to the Packers, Hammer. I know it was a rough way to go out, but you're right. They did overperform. My final guy I want to discuss, or I should say team and guy, is going to be the Ravens offense / offensive coordinator / Lamar Jackson. They come into that game. They killed the Texans, right? So everyone's like, the Ravens are rolling. They're going to come against Kansas City and just beat them up at home. Everyone thought they were going to come into that game, beat up Kansas City. The Chiefs. They had Travis Kelce, and that's about it. At least on the passing front, you got Pacheco running the ball, so that's always tough. But with just Travis Kelce as the main receiver for the Chiefs, God, my brain. I think that's kind of the only matchup they had to shut down. They have the players to do it. They were not able to. You saw it in the first half of the game. They came out, shut them. Like Travis Kelce was balling out. But on the offensive side, the side I really wanted to discuss, Lamar Jackson didn't play to his capabilities. That he ran the ball a little bit in the first half. Second half, you didn't see it as much. Second half, it kind of faded away. He was staying in the pocket for a little while, which I respect. Yeah, he wants to throw the ball. He wasn't playing to his capability and his strengths to just run the ball down the field every play. He had that one crazy play in the first half where he gets tipped, he catches it, runs for it. It was like, that's Lamar Jackson. That's what you want to see, that this guy's dynamic every single play. Came out second half, kind of wasn't the same. He was throwing the ball, but it didn't look great. And then at the end of the game, that pass and triple coverage to lose, I mean, that was ridiculous. Yeah, maybe if you throw it up and over, he has a shot at it. Isaiah likely put his hand up because he thought, hey, maybe I'm open over the top. And maybe if Lamar Jackson throws it to the back end zone, the back of the end zone up high, you have a shot. But he underthrew it. He underthrew it 5 yards behind him. Just an ugly, ugly throw. And it was not a good look. Second of all, they had 6 rushes, 6 handoffs to running backs in the whole game. And you look back at it, Hammer and I we know we've discussed it the whole entire year. We had Gus Bus on our fantasy team. They relied on him every single game to score touchdowns until the last few games of the season where he kind of fell off a little bit, but they were relying on other guys like Justice Hill and I'm blanking on the running back that was actually pretty good for them as well. But that being said, that run game is what you need to rely on as a Ravens team and as a Ravens offense, and not calling runs for those players is ridiculous. And I think a little bit as well as the passing game, the receivers weren't doing as much. Zay Flowers really let the team down. He had the taunting penalty and then the fumble going in the end zone. That killed him. That was huge. That's not Lamar Jackson's fault. There's not really much you can do about that. I'll give him props for that. But towards the end of that game, their offense just kind of fell apart and it looked really, really sloppy, albeit against a good defense. But the Bills just went out and put 24 points up, or 21 or 24, whatever it was. The Ravens only put up 10. So the Ravens offense definitely underperformed. And I'm kind of bummed out that they did, because I really was hoping the Ravens could pull that one out.
Yeah, I totally agree. That Ravens offense, and especially in the second half of that, playoff game, did not look like themselves. What they've been looking like all year. So, very different story. But that's going to do it for this segment. We're going to be talking about some coaches, where they're going, interviews lined up, and then, of course, Grayson's going to be talking about his top 2 candidates for the Saints offense coordinator job, and I'm going to be talking about my top 2 candidates for the Packers defense coordinator job. So let's get right into it after the break.
Yeah, really quick, just comment down below your guys' picks for under or over performers that we missed. Comment down below to let us know. All right, guys, getting right into our coaching segment of the week. There were a few coaching moves that were kind of major. The first one just happened during this episode, Mike MacDonald to the Ravens. And that's a good move, or to the Seahawks, from the Ravens. And I think that's a big move for the Seahawks. I said the Legion of Boom might be coming back, and I think that's what the Seahawks are doing with this move. Finding a young coach, looking to reestablish that kind of defensive dynasty that they had in the Seahawks. And if they're able to do that, Seahawks are going to be back rolling in the NFC. Next, we had Arthur Smith to the Steelers. And for a team that was begging, and I mean begging, for a new offensive coordinator that had a younger play style and was able to use the players well, coming out, firing Matt Canada, using an interim OC for a few games, and they actually looked all right. Then you come out and hire Arthur Smith was such a weird decision to me, because Arthur Smith, his whole problem in Atlanta was that he had no clue what the hell to do with his weapons that he drafted. He came out, drafted Bijan early. He came out, drafted Kyle Pitts early. Both guys, until the end of the year, at least, Kyle Pitts never really showed up. They never really used him. They're using Jonnu Smith more than him. Who knows why the hell they're doing that? Then you have Bijan Robinson. Until the end of the year, he wasn't doing squat. Hammer and I had him for a fantasy game, but he came out, had negative 0.1 yards because he ran, or 0.1 yard, whatever, because he was sick. And then didn't disclose it to anyone, didn't tell anyone. And then he came out, ran for 1 yard, and that was about it. Arthur Smith has no clue what the hell he's doing on offense. And for them the Steelers to come out and pick him up, it doesn't make sense. I think they should have gone a different route. And I think there's other guys available, or even going in-house and sticking with the offensive coordinator that was the interim guy. With Mason Rudolph as quarterback, they were doing well. So I'm interested to see what they do this upcoming season. Mike Tomlin, as you know, is a good head coach. I think they might be able to do a winning record again. If they did it this year, why the hell couldn't they do it next year? So we'll see what they do. Hopefully George Pickens gets more involved. Jalen Warren, I think he's going to be the running back one of the future for you guys. So I'm interested to see what they do.
Yeah. On top, I think the Seattle move was awesome. I think MacDonald is going to be a great fit there, and young, good coach. That's going to be really exciting for Seattle fans. And then I think over in Pittsburgh, I think we'll just have to wait and see. That's a very questionable move, and yeah, we're gonna wait and see. And then Ben Johnson, kind of, I think was the top head coach candidate for a lot of teams heading into the offseason. Lions OC, he declined interviews from Seattle and the Commanders. Didn't want to be a head coach this year. Wants to remain in Detroit, remain the offensive coordinator. Interesting. I feel like we've seen something like this before. Cough, cough. Josh McDaniels, who kind of turned down head coaching positions year after year. Kind of waited. Stayed in New England. Kind of similar to what Ben Johnson's doing. Definitely gonna be a hot candidate to be a head coach next year. And stinks that he stays in the division for another year. But I don't know. At the same time, the two teams that it kind of came down to was Seattle and Washington. And, maybe that's not maybe he's not very interested in those two teams. There's not a lot to work with, especially if you get stuck with Washington. And I get it. I understand. Wait a year, see what's open next year. And, yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think the big thing was he just wants to run it back, try to get a Super Bowl. And I think that's big for him. If he's able to come out, do the Lions again, and I think they're going to get another good draft. They've been drafting really well the last few years. I think they do it again. I think it's completely possible. They have another good draft, get another young load of young talent onto the team. And then I think he looks for a head coaching job next year. And I honestly think, as a Saints fan, if things don't go well in the next couple of weeks in the offensive coordinator search, the Ben Johnson in New Orleans as the head coach is going to be a very strong propaganda next year for Saints fans. So we'll see what's going on there. And then the Texans, similar situation. Bobby Slowick, he came out, said, I'm going to stick with the Texans as well. He was another head coach candidate for some teams. He basically said, I'm staying as well. So that was a big shocker to a couple teams as well. So interesting to see what those two guys do. They have young teams with good offenses, and I think that's why they want to stay. Kind of just give another year, try to coach them up, get another winning season. So interesting decisions by both those coaches.
Yeah, definitely.
What were you
going to
say?
Top two coordinators for the Saints.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. So for the Saints offensive coordinator search, Gerard Johnson was probably the number one guy. Quarterbacks coach of the Texans. He just released information that he's coming back to the Texans as well. So the next two guys that really the Saints can really go after that are good hires at all are going to be Clint Kubiak and Brian Greasy, both assistant coaches for the 49ers. So they have to wait till after the Super Bowl for any news on that front to be released. I think they can agree to a deal technically, like before the Super Bowl, but I wouldn't expect any news on that front to come out before it. I don't think they would upstage the Super Bowl, be like, hey, we're signing with this team, we're going over there. I don't see that happening. Other than that, if those two guys fall through, it's going to be a crappy year for the Saints, but I think we go for Ronald Curry, our quarterbacks coach, goes to OC, just promote from within. That's about it. Hammer, what about you, defense coordinator?
Two guys that I really like, Denardo Wilson, D-backs coach for the Ravens, been in the league for a long time, played a little bit for the Redskins. He was DB coach for the Jets, Jamal Adams' rookie year when he was a stud. He was defensive backs coach for the Eagles last year when they were the number one secondary. Had a really good year, made it to the Super Bowl. And this past season, he was the DB's coach for the Ravens, best defense in the league. So he's been around a lot of good systems, a lot of good coaches. Fangio, Spagnuolo, he was with. I'm blanking, but some other guys, Mike MacDonald, another dude he was just with. So he's got a lot of perspectives, ideas from a lot of great defensive minds in today's game. And I think you also look at the places he's been and the units and how they've rated and how they produced. And he's pretty damn good with player development. Another guy I like is Christian Parker, very young guy. He was with the Packers 3-4 years ago. He was a defensive quality control coach. And ever since then, he's been with the Denver Broncos as a defensive backs coach. Really young, bright coach. And he's going to soon be a defensive coordinator, maybe for the Packers, maybe not. But those are two names that I would keep an eye out for if you're a Packers fan, and who I think we'd like. I think they're both bring a young, new energy, aggressive system, which is what we haven't had with Joe Barry. And, with this news coming out with Mike MacDonald, if the Packers want Denard Wilson from Baltimore, they got to move quickly because now that defensive coordinator spot is open in Baltimore. And I would imagine Denard Wilson is first in line to get that job. So Packers must move quickly. And but with that being said, I think a lot of these coaching hirings are going to kind of come together in this next week before the Super Bowl, as they typically do. So maybe next time we see you guys, the Packers and the Saints will have new coordinators. And Jenks, closing thoughts.
And I think I agree with what you just said. It's going to kind of shape up the next couple of weeks. I think this week's going to be huge. Senior Bowl is going on right now. Hammer and I aren't there, but hopefully next year we will be. We'll see.
Next year.
But I think the Senior Bowl, there's going to be a couple interviews going on down there as well. And I think maybe a couple more hirings while that's going on. So other than that, I think everyone should start looking at the Senior Bowl. Hammer and I are going to start looking at our draft prospects, start rating guys, start figuring that all out. And I think I'm excited for this offseason. I think it's a big offseason for us. And I hope you guys all enjoy what we got coming. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, big offseason. Super Bowl next week, prediction video. And then after that, onto the draft for agency. Going to have a guest on. It's going to be a good time, good offseason. Definitely going to grow and get better each week as we continue to do. So with that being said, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Jenks and Arthur Pod. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube at Jenks and Arthur Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you guys next week for the Taylor Swift Super Bowl.
Thank you for tuning in to the Jenks and the Hammer podcast. Remember to leave a review and follow all of our social media pages at Jenks Hammer Pod for more content. Until next time, who dat? And go Pack Go!